Welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, the show where we bust all the crazy stupid marketing myths that people think are good advice and make sure they're actually getting good advice. So welcome to the show. If it's your first time here, we're glad to have you. If it's your second time here, we're glad to have you. I don't know how many shows we've done of this, but you're always welcome here. So we're pleased to have you. For our people who are joining us live, we would love to know that you're here. So if you would love to let us know in the chat that you are here, we would love to be able to say hello to you. But also, as we go through the conversation today, all of us have different perspectives, experiences, insights that we have gathered over our years on different topics. And specifically today, we're talking about energy, which all of us have or don't have, depending on the day it is for you. But we all have our own experiences. And when we add those experiences to the conversation, it makes the conversation much more robust. So if you are joining us live, we would love to hear your voice in the chat. So please join us that way. Our conversation today is about the energy of creation, which we're not talking about how the universe was created here, but we are talking about how marketing is created on a day-to-day basis and whether or not, I mean, there's always some kind of energy that goes into that, but what kind of energy is it? Is it excited energy? Is it, oh my God, I have to do this again energy? What kind of energy is it? And based on the energy input, what does that look like from an output perspective? All the way down the line to, if we're putting these things out for a marketing reason, are they accomplishing things? Are they helping us grow our business, our visibility, our awareness, our leads, whatever it is you might be trying to track from a marketing perspective? So today we're going to talk about that energy and how it comes to play, because honestly, I've had enough conversations about marketing KPIs and how we can send more emails. And this is not bad. More on the human experience side of what it looks like to create marketing collateral. So as always, I'm not in this conversation by myself, although I probably have enough voices in my head to have a conversation for myself. But I'm here with a fantastic guest today, Luke Frazier. Luke, can you introduce yourself, give everybody a little understanding of who you are and why energy is so important to you?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Tracy. This is an exciting topic because I have been in the world of some sort of creation. I think it feels like most of my life, and I thought it'd be apt if I actually recorded this conversation with you in my sauna, which I have been recording a lot of content because this is a good place to rejuvenate and actually get some of that energy. But I own a company called Parable Brand, and we are a brand strategy and content agency, really looking to help brands, especially in the SaaS space, do kind of exactly what we're talking about today. Like, how do you keep up content creation? How do you keep up creation in general? And so very excited to have this conversation around it. I think it's something that people don't necessarily talk about. They tell you to post every day and they tell you to do X, Y, and Z every day, but we don't often think about the implications behind that and the effect it has on the people running these things. So excited to see what we dive into.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is a good place to start is what you mentioned, right? People say you have to post every day. And I feel like for me, what I hear is people are getting stressed out about that. They don't know what to post.
Right.
They feel like they just have to create. And then all of a sudden it almost like it filters out the creation, the creativity that could go into it. So from your experience, Luke, how is this kind of master narrative about how frequently we have to show up from a marketing perspective, inhibiting our ability to actually get to the best creative we could be?
Yeah, it's like the ultimate tension. I think most anyone in the world of marketing lives in, because they're on one side, the role of marketing really is to not just bring more leads, but to help increase revenue. Marketing is ultimately tied to revenue as much as sales is. And so there is a tension of We have to get stuff out there that produces. But then majority of the time, people who get into this world are people who love to write or love to paint or love to, do something that is seemingly more natural or considered art rather than, lead gen marketing or growth marketing. And that tension, I have found, can be really debilitating if I am only creating for myself or creating for our clients out of a place of fear, which really is, I think, sometimes what can happen in that tension. We can get caught in this fear of like, oh my gosh, I'm not creating enough, or it rarely is the fear around I wasn't creative enough.
Mm.
The fear is, oh, it's not generating anything. To me, that's what I have found, right? That the fear doesn't come from a lack of creativity, but it comes from a lack of production or results, or someone else breathing down your neck saying, hey, we need to be at X amount of followers, and we're not at this many followers yet, especially in the social world, or we haven't crossed this revenue stream yet. And so I think for me, just being able to acknowledge the difference between fear-based creation and creation that I just love, or creation that is fun and exciting. And just kind of practically, one of the ways that I have been able to shift my energy, especially just even honestly in the past like month or two, is this stupid sauna here. Because I was even just like as sort of small as like my personal creation on LinkedIn. I was just sort of in this lull of like feeling like, oh man, I'm not doing anything important, or no one really cares about my stuff. And when it's funny, like when I only focus on the results, I think I'm doing bad, right? I think I'm doing a bad job. And granted, the results, or like what we determine to be the results, I think matters a lot too. Like, we assume success is how many people are following or liking or engaging. But on the back end, it's often funny, and I've seen you talk about this, and a lot of people talk about it too, especially on LinkedIn. The most of the time, people who are creating are often selling to people who never engage with their content, right? Or the people who never engage often are the most of the times people buying, and it's been true with us too. But yeah, I found like I got in this silly, we have the sauna outside, and I got in here one day because the baby was crying and I needed a quiet space to do something. So I got out here and just started going, like just started filming stuff, just started writing stuff. And the sauna has become this sort of stupid, little like familiar space that now people like comment on my posts and make jokes about, and create familiarity about. And to me, it's reinvigorated a sense of creativity, because no longer is it about just creating really good brand marketing content that people can relate to and like learn from and buy from, but it's also creating stuff that's relatable. And I think for me, that's the big shift, is moving from fear of success to creation out of really relatable content and relationship. And so I've actually found more energy renewal in just saying, hey, will this resonate with somebody, either for the content itself or the environment, or could I make someone smile with it? And so it's a reframing. Like, marketing isn't always about getting a dollar, right, but it is always about building relationship.
I think this is a really big thing that I think we assume that it's always like the underlying thing in marketing, but I think that assumption is unsafe, because then a lot of times we get into the production of things and we lose that intention of building a relationship. And one of the amazing things is, even if a relationship that you build doesn't go on to be a client or the partner, right, or an investor, or any of those things that you're trying to build in terms of relationships, that doesn't mean that feeling of connection is it meaningful? And it's not that it's not memorable, right? So maybe they're not in your target audience. Nope. And I'm not here saying like only build relationships with people who are not in your target audience, because that doesn't make sense. But there's more to it from a human perspective than just the outcome of the sale. And I don't know about you, Luke, but like one of the things for me that I get referrals all the time. Well, you need to talk to Tracy. You need to talk to Tracy. A lot of times because I've had one coffee chat with somebody and I gave them a new thing to think about that they hadn't thought about before. Oh, you need to talk to Tracy. And that is based on a one-time experience that that person had of me. And sometimes it's yesterday, and sometimes it's forever ago that I probably have forgotten about. And all of these things pile on top of each other. So I always talk about social media posts in particular as like each one of them is a paragraph in a book. So a paragraph on its own could be quite powerful. You might be able to pull it out of the book and be like, yeah, but you probably don't understand the whole book just by reading a single paragraph. You build this understanding of a book because you have these layered levels of interaction. And when it comes to the conversation about energy, this is where I clarify for people all the time the difference between frequency and consistency. And when I think about consistency, it's much more in that energy component. Like, how am I showing up and making people feel a specific way through my energy? Not that I can make anybody feel anyway, but that's what they take away because my energy contributed that. And sometimes it's a post, and sometimes it's a video, and sometimes it's an in-person conversation, and sometimes it's a Zoom call. But the energy behind it is the same, and therefore the consistency exists. Versus a lot of what I've seen in corporate marketing, which is let's get a social post out every day. And sometimes it's our original content, but most of the time it's us like sharing other people's content, or there's this stat, or there's this. And it's just the consistency, while frequent, doesn't actually add up to consistency because it doesn't have that same kind of vibe coming. So what are your thoughts on that kind of underlying vibe component?
You know what, as you're talking about consistency and frequency, so it just as a translation, I was a runner for a while, marathon runner. And so, you know, I have this funny story where my first marathon, I didn't train at all. And then I went out and ran the race. And I was working out consistently. I was in shape and whatever. And I was a lot younger, and so it made sense. But I did it, but it was very painful. It was very painful, and I couldn't walk for weeks after that, and I couldn't run for weeks after that. So did the big thing, awesome. Now year later, I ran another marathon, but trained for it. So I spent 12 weeks plus training for this race, and did the race, had a phenomenal run, and hurt for a little bit, but I was able to run the next week. And so to me, especially when it comes to like, businesses that have social presences or businesses that are creating any kind of marketing, trying to just put a post out there and thinking it will land is going to be very painful for you. Putting one big thing out there, or maybe it's a couple things that are just generic, they're job posts or they're events that you're going to, or reposts of someone else like you're talking about. Those are going to just be painful because I think what happens is those teams or those people, those organizations think, oh, I've heard everyone else is on this platform, so we need to get on this platform, so this is how we're going to do it.
Right.
And you're literally, you're putting minimal energy into it, and the people who are watching this or receiving it, actually, I think kind of sucks energy away from your business, which is funny, right? You put a little bit of energy in, and it actually steals energy away because it doesn't do anything. And so this is where I think brands need to just kind of like a marathon. You got to build up to it. You have to build up to where you can feel comfortable. And whether it's it's your community marketing manager, or your social media marketing manager, or whoever that person is, maybe it's even your CMO or a fractional CMO doing this content creation, give it some time to build up. Don't try to, eat the whole elephant or run the whole marathon today. Like, when you can't, give yourself time and grace to say, hey, we don't need to do everything today, but where could we start? That is an area of expertise that we know a ton about, or our clients ask a lot about, or people ask us a lot of questions about. Where can we start as far as content creation in that space? And can we just answer those questions? Can we find a question and answer it? Can we find a question and answer it? And sure enough, you go through this process enough reps and enough times, the creation just doesn't, it feels like it's easy, because all we're doing is listening to our audience or listening to our team and just pulling stuff from those conversations. And it has been any of the content creation that we've done, and I'm sure you've done too, you and I've talked about this, where it's just like, all I did was interview the CEO, and I got an hour's worth of knowledge from this person's brain and experience and the customers. And all of a sudden we've got 3 months worth of content. And so I think it's a lot easier. And to be honest, for people like you and I, like, our jobs is to like take the burden off that it feels like it should be hard, or it feels like it should be a win right away.
Right.
And so that's, to me, I think just understanding the balance of like, what is my input? Because I think sometimes it feels overwhelming, and that's maybe where we lose energy, and versus what does the output need to be. And so I think just for people just better in the creation process, like, I think that's pretty valuable, like understanding sort of that process in and of itself,
Yeah. Well, for me, it's always interesting, because even if we were going to say we want to put out X amount of pieces of content in a week, there's like infinite amounts of ways that could be created.
Sure.
And I think this is, again, one of the blind spots that people have, is that like, oh, the hot thing is reels, so I have to do reels, or the hot thing is carousels, so I have to do carousels. I've never done a carousel on LinkedIn. Maybe that's bad, maybe that's good, I don't know, but it doesn't feel easy for me, so I don't do it. Versus I do lots of LinkedIn lives because it feels easy for me, which isn't necessarily the case for other people. But in that part of the conversation, instead of saying like, okay, we have this marketing team and we want to create 4 pieces of content in a week. How would we do that? What is that person uniquely interested in? What am I interested in? Like, I've always loved writing long form content. I write an article once a week on LinkedIn. When I worked in corporate, I wrote lots of blog posts because I like to write blog posts, but also because it takes me an hour to write a blog post.
Right.
Whereas sometimes I would be like, oh, the sales rep wants to write a blog post, and then he'll like track 8 hours of time writing a blog post, and he doesn't even feel good about it, right? And then you're like, okay, well, this is the wrong distribution of tasks, because now the wrong person is doing that activity. We wasted 7 hours of the company's time, and we didn't get anything more out of that. And so it's one thing to let people experiment with things. Sometimes they don't know that until they've tried it. But there is this opportunity to say like, okay, you know what? We have a marketing coordinator. Our marketing coordinator is killer at like coordinating, distributing, blah, 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 blah. Not a writer. Like, doesn't want to write, no interest in that. So why would we make them write a blog post once a week? That doesn't make sense. That's where, again, this like energy stuff comes in, because now I'm forcing someone to do something they wouldn't naturally do. And I'm using that as part of my brand message to the world, which to me, that is crazy. Like, and the number of people that I talk to who think I need to have more of a presence on LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever. And I ask them why they want that. Like, so people can build a relationship with me. Like, okay, so do you think outsourcing that to someone else is going to help them build a relationship with you? No? Okay, so let's not do that. But you also don't have 12 hours a week to spend on social media.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Both of these things are true. You want to be able to show up and do something you would do, and you don't have infinite amount of time. So how do we find the happy medium here of what you can do, and how can you build on that, right? Because just like anything else, riding a bike, when you start, you're wobbly, right? It feels hard, it takes longer, but once you practice, you can go super fast, and then you can go get him, go run your race. Right?
Yeah.
It takes practice to do that, and
Right.
as much as marketing is an industry that I think embraces experimentation and things of that nature, I don't think we're actually creating enough space for individual people to be like, you know what, I love long form content. Can I write long form content? When I was in corporate, I asked my CEO if I could run a podcast because I would kill this. I'm like so good at interviewing people. I know our clients. I get like all the best stuff out of them. I would be so good at this. And she's like, no. And I'm like, okay, fine, right? Like you're the CEO, you don't want a podcast for the business, you want a podcast for business, but I could execute on that like so fast and it would be so good. And all of a sudden we're available on another channel for people to find us that they can't find us right now. Or we can continue to post blindly on social media every day and create no traction that way. And so that I always think this is something too from a leadership perspective. I was having a conversation earlier with someone about leadership and how leaders can support their people. And I would think recognize that, right? Recognize that someone's like, oh, they got a hankering for that. Well, let them try it. Right?
Yeah.
Who cares if we had a podcast for 3 episodes and then it didn't go anywhere? It'd be like 90% of podcasts.
Yeah. There's definitely, I mean, to me, like, I love what you're talking about because on some level, like, you just have to try. You have to try getting on video and seeing if it works for you. And you can't just try once. You've got to try like 10 to 20 times because the first 10 to 20 might suck. The first 100 might suck. Try writing the blog post. Try, doing short form. Try getting on to TikTok if you want to do that. Like, try getting into these spaces and seeing what works best. Like, I love that you're talking about writing, be long form. That takes effort for a lot of people, but you found out it doesn't take a lot of effort and you can do it fairly quickly. How did you find out for yourself that writing and interviewing were like, they actually not only weren't a lot of energy for you, but actually gave you energy maybe?
Yeah. Well, I think the most important thing is to pay attention because I think all of us have these things that we do. And if we pay attention, we can see what things do we do that drain our energy, what things do we do that build our energy, and how can we create a mashup that can make this work. So an example I always give is that I hate accounting. Accounting is a draining activity for me. The number one thing I outsourced in my business, which, fun fact, everyone was telling me I needed to outsource my social media. And yeah, sure. You know what? It's probably cheaper for me to have a social media manager than it is for me to have the accountant that I have. But I like doing social media. I don't like doing accounting. So that's why I outsource it to somebody who likes doing accounting. I don't want to do that. But even when I have to just like compile my receipts and all of these things, and I'm like, ugh, this is the worst. And so I know that's going to drain my energy. And so I sandwich that activity with things I know that bring my energy up, which for me is always conversations with people. I love having conversations with people, especially new people, because they for sure have a new perspective I have never heard before. And that's awesome. Is maybe not as exciting for other people as it is for me. But the point is that it's exciting for me. So I build around that. I have built my work calendar so that I have time for 2 new conversations with people every day, every work day.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, it took some doing to like coordinate this so that it would fit with all the like client work and coaching and all of the other things that need to happen. But when you have that awareness about yourself, then you can start, one, you can create it for yourself, but you can also ask other people for it. I had a employee once in this a little bit, it's kind of similar scenario. It wasn't a marketing department. And he came to me and he is like, okay, I've been using this Pomodoro time management technique and it's working really well for me. And I'm like, okay, I have no idea what that is. Can you please explain it to me? And it's this like work for 20 minutes or 25 minutes and then take a 5-minute break and you do like rotate that all day. And I was like, you know what? That's fine. I mean, I can't promise you that if we have like an hour-long meeting, you can take a 5-minute break in between. But in terms of managing the majority of your day, if that's what works for you, go to town, man. That's fine. If we end up having a performance issue, we can talk about it. But I don't know that it's going to cause a performance. It might cause improved performance. So yeah, let's try it. And even things like, I had a conversation about this the other day. Like, when do you feel the most creative? Like, do you feel creative in the morning? I feel creative mostly right when I get out of the shower, which I think is something that's I've heard a lot of people say that. But how many of those people use the time right after they get out of the shower than to write? Okay? You want to create content and you know that that's when your juices are flowing? Do that. I have a client who is like, I can't create with, we have our own stories as well, but I can't create when I'm sitting down. I'm like, great, stand up, go for a walk. That is allowed. And this is the thing that, again, that's so interesting to me is that all of these things are available, but if we don't know from ourselves first what is easy, and again, take it back a step, we don't know what's easy until we tried it a few times. I always have this rule. You remember when I met my husband and he told me he didn't like curry? And I was like, I'm sorry. There's like a million different kinds of curry. So like, say you don't like curry.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, okay. Well, I had this green curry once that I didn't like. And I was like, okay. But there's also yellow curry and red curry and like butter chicken. And there's like this whole world of curries, right? And since then, he's tried other ones, and some he likes and some he doesn't like. This is the point. Right? Your marketing content creation is curry. There's lots of different kinds and lots of different flavor. Some is more spicy, some is less spicy, some is more sweet, some you can eat quite often, some you don't want to eat that often. All of these things, I like to talk about a content repertoire. So like, what's your repertoire of moves that you have in your content? Sometimes you post this. Maybe sometimes you like to do video. I very rarely do video unless I'm writing something and I'm like super passionate about it and I don't feel like oomph is coming through in the writing. Then I'll do a video. I like to do LinkedIn Lives on the weekly. Some people would find that totally overwhelming. You have to try it. Just see if you like it. And it's also okay to say no, or like, no, my energy is not optimized in that scenario. And what I'm looking to do here is optimize my energy so that I can create at my maximum capacity in the smallest amount of time possible.
Right. Yeah.
Because this is, at the beginning, you talked about like, you might feel like you are being creative, but you haven't accomplished the thing. And I would actually say that in my experience, especially in corporate marketing departments, what I've watched happen is people are focused so heavily on the deliverable that they don't even remember to think about whether or not they felt creative in the process.
Not at all. Too often, especially in B2B, we just like creative goes out the window.
Right.
It doesn't have to be creative. Let's just go, like, literally, it's like, let's just go copy and paste what someone else is doing and make it ours because it was working for them.
Right.
And without any, without any effort or without any insight. And I think honestly, that's where people probably lose a lot of their energy or don't even feel like they're doing creative work anymore. And I think that it's also just important to note here that like creative work being creative in general doesn't have to look even like what you and I are talking about today. Doesn't have to look like a blog post. You could be an accountant and make a really gorgeous spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm. And feel creative doing that.
And feel like a mad scientist, right? And so I think we kind of need to debunk the idea that creative is something magical, or you're gonna make the next Disney film somehow with your LinkedIn post. Like, this isn't true. But I love what you're talking about. Just go back to the things that kind of bring you joy, or bring you like, just make you feel good, like when you're doing the task, right?
Right.
Coupled with timing. Now, you're talking about that, and I just thought, this is an interesting one because it's just real and it's my life right now. I have an 8-month-old who's teething, and I live, we live in a household, and there's lots of stuff going on, and we got chickens outside, and like there's just, I'm combining my life with my wife's schedule and other people's schedules and client schedules, and I'm in a funky season where, like, it is it's becoming more and more difficult to own that time for me when I feel like I'm making good stuff. But also, on the tail end of this, or the other side of this, is the factor of, like, I might do creatively or feel creatively like I've done my best work, but the distribution's off, or the timing's off, or it's irrelevant. The context doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's, for me, like, what I have sort of compartmentalized in the process of creation for myself is, like, I mean, I go back to running. Like, there was a time in run training where like, when I was hurting, I'm sore, and it's raining outside, and I didn't want to go out that day. And there's a part of me that I didn't feel like it at all. And maybe you've been there with writing. Like, I don't feel like it. The energy or the motivation is not there. And I've sort of learned in myself that, like, well, if I just start taking steps to doing it, then something's going to happen. It might be a bad run, but I went on a run anyway. My feet were going. And I have found the same to be true in creation a lot of times, especially in the season of, like, some nights not a lot of sleep. I'm having, like, I love connecting with people, but if I have too many conversations in a day, it does start depleting my energy. I'm sort of like in the middle of an introvert extrovert, I'm finding out in my life. And so there's, like, I'm having to watch that ebb and flow, but there are some days it's like zero energy. It feels like zero energy all day long. Like, I feel like I'm doing mundane tasks, and I've just been, it's been like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm just like, dude, I have got to go. I feel awful right now. I have to just go create something. And I will get it. And this is where, like, it's not writing for me. It's not, it's not, graphic design for me. It's not pottery for me. It's like sitting in front of a camera and just talking, and just talking and just going. And it might create some crap stuff, but usually there's a nugget in there. Usually there's a nugget of, like, it works. And so I don't know, for, again, just like me in my season of energy and creation and life, like, part of me is just like, just do it anyway, ship it out, don't worry about it.
Right.
Like, did I have fun in the process? And what's funny is, like, in those moments where I, like, am so energy depleted, it's the end of the day, and I still need to create something for, like, the next couple of days or whatever it is, I actually, like, get, like, my energy gets up, like, my adrenaline starts going, and I leave that, session or recording just being like, wow, like, I could probably go work 6 more hours, after this, just because I get into that flow. And so, I don't know, there's also just a word of grace here for people. Like, don't feel, just because you don't feel like it some days, the motivation's maybe not there, doesn't mean you can't go anyway. Doesn't mean you can't step into the process anyway of creating. Or, there's a good friend of mine, or a good acquaintance of mine. We started to become friends. Um, and he runs. He was a choreographer in Hollywood for a while, and now runs this thing called Groove, where he just helps people. Like he goes into corporate events and gets people to dance essentially.
Mm.
And I don't know about you, but like dancing is like some of the most awkward. It's like the most awkward creative expression you could have. Because it's like one of those things. Like everyone can dance, but not everyone feels like they can dance or do it
Right.
well. And so there's a part of that process that's just like, hey, I don't care where you're at or how you feel or what you think people are going to look at you weird or think of you. You just got to get out there, almost close your eyes and just start moving your body.
Mm.
Just start moving and getting it, because when you start moving, when we start putting energy towards stuff, we actually get re-energized.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I don't know if you felt that way in your creation process, but just over the years, I found and I'm not talking about like, hey, just grind it through, like get another rep, it's not really that attitude. It's just more of like, man, you are in a work day and you actually have something to produce because it's your job. And you don't feel like it. Well, maybe you take a break for a second. Maybe you, like what your coworker was talking about, go do the 5 minutes, or maybe you just start doing something to see if you can kickstart the engine.
Mm-hmm. And I will also say, like, I've had those times where, like, I try and I try and I try. Like, I remember this one day,
Yeah.
I wrote like 3 different versions of an article,
Yes.
and I was just like, I am not feeling any of these topics.
Yeah.
And then I ended up writing a post about like how to create content when you're not feeling it, because that's what was happening
Perfect.
for me. I was not feeling it.
Yeah.
And even like honest with all of you viewers, I was not. I was excited to talk to Luke, but I was like, I've had energy drain all day
Yeah.
today. And it was like,
Yeah.
I couldn't like mentally get myself like hyped up for this. But I was like, I know
Yeah.
as soon as I'm in the conversation, it's
Exactly.
going to flow and I'm going to feel that energy. So again, when you can start to create those dots and say, like, okay, maybe I'm not feeling this in this moment, but if I get to part B of this, then
Yeah.
I am going to be feeling it and I'm going to have more energy than I brought into
Mhm.
this. And maybe it's not like my 100% energy that's available on a possibility level for Tracy, but it's a lot higher than it was before I started. So now
Yeah.
we're moving in the right direction. And I also
Right.
want to talk about, like, quickly, because you touched on it, Luke, is this fact that we all have external energy factors that are coming
Yep.
to play a role, right? So like I can handle one night with a like restless sleep when my son is sick or something like that. But if I have 2 nights in a row, I am
Yeah.
game over. I am not,
Yeah.
you cannot ask me to be creative. I will not ask myself to be creative. I will mostly cancel anything I need to do that's important because my brain is not functioning even close
Right.
to capacity. And I'm not in a place where I can get to that place. And as entrepreneurs, I think we have more freedom in allowing and creating permission for that. But in the corporate work environment, the experiences of the people are the same. There are
Yeah.
people who have 8-month-old kids at home who are teething. There are people
Yeah.
who have 4-month-olds who are going through a sleep regression. There are people who have a migraine today because the weather keeps doing
Yeah.
weird stuff. There's people who fought with their kid on the way out of the door this morning because they didn't want to participate in the day, right? Like all of these
Yeah.
things impact people's energy, and
Mhm.
it is connected to their capacity when it comes to delivering tasks. And so it's just really interesting to look at that too from a team perspective to say, what is the actual value here? I could make
Yeah.
this person write a blog post today. Yep, I could. And could they? Yep. But they wouldn't be happy about it. It's probably not going to deliver anything from us.
Right.
And what is the difference in value I can create for that person if I create space for them to be like, hey, this is like, that sounds terrible. Even if you've never experienced it yourself, that sounds terrible. And you should rest. Or why don't you go like take a walk? Or I talked to someone once who said, like, I can almost always totally reset if I spend an hour in my garden. And I was like, well, then if you were stressed out, at work, then I would just say, go to the garden. Just like, whoa there, you are in grump mode. You should go spend an hour in your garden and then come back and then we can talk about a blog post. But whether it's, I mean, honestly, I think when we think about creation from a like really personal perspective, like I'm going to paint or I'm going to dance is an example you gave, right? Like I'm going to dance because I feel it, right? Like I walk down the grocery store aisle and dance down the aisle because the music is just in my body. And my son has started doing it too, and it's the cutest. But like, that's not everybody. That's me, right? So when you can tap into those things and then move things, okay, like do that. I have this. I don't know if you know the song "I Believe in a Thing Called Love" by The Darkness. But if people are watching and don't know the song, please go and look it up. But it's like my go-to energy transfer song because this is a song. I don't know, maybe there are people in the world who can listen to it and not feel good after, but I can't. It can take me from like the lowest of lows to like, yes. This is like, that's my thing. And when we get like pay attention to those things, and then we pay attention to those things as a team, just think of the difference that makes from an energy capacity. And if I don't like to talk about humans as batteries, but if we're talking about energy and we want to generate more output, then what do you think allows that to happen? More energy.
Right. Yeah.
So how are we creating more energy?
Right. And it's a really important, I mean, I think for individuals, it's really important, but even more important for leaders who are managing people, who expect something from people, who are holding other people accountable. Just are you able to determine the energy of your team today? You know, and I think that's just a really important thing. You know, really good leaders don't just manage people and expectations. They actually find spaces to give people more energy. And that's not an easy thing to do. You got, right. You have to like, you know, my wife and I we've been together 5 years, married for 2, and I'm still figuring out how to like give her spaces, and she's figuring out how to give me spaces to you know, get re-energize. So I think it's just like, you've got to be radically intentional as a leader, with your own energy level and creation level, but then even more so with your people, you know, being able to check in. You know, I came from a background in the mental health world, and this was just we taught things like, you know, at the beginning of every meeting, we do just a quick like an emotional like check-in with everybody before, like 5 to 10 minutes of beginning of the meeting is all about like, how's everybody doing? What are you grateful for in your life? Like, because it's just getting people to reframe that, like, yeah, I might have had a really hard day. The kids might have gone crazy. You know, someone might have passed away in my life. Like, I might have gotten hit in a car. Like, there's so many things that could happen. But, you know, shifting our mindsets to gratitude and what we do have, and the families or the lives or the jobs, like what the experiences that we have, can also just be a simple way of re-energizing people. But I also think a lot of times when people are de-energized, so when I felt de-energized and get like a text from somebody or get a call from somebody out of the blue, it can like very quickly re-energize me. And so there's also just another thing, again, as the leader, like, just check in with your people, tell them they're doing a great job, give them an affirmation, like support them in their work, tell them they have been doing a good job, because maybe they've been sitting around wondering that everything that they're creating, it might be performing, but does my boss even like it? You know, do they approve? And so, I think it's just on the back end, really important for leaders to look at something like this for their teams as well.
Yeah. And the thing I would add to that is leading by example, because I think a lot of times leaders can create that type of thing or have the intention of creating that for their team, but then forget to do it for themselves, or they don't have the practice of doing that for yourself. And it's one of the things that I have found works much better through a lead by example scenario, because a lot of times, especially if people have worked in different places before coming to work for you, they might have what I like to call corporate trauma, which is this is how that person liked to manage people, or this is how that person liked it to be done. So now I assume that that's how everyone likes it to be done, which is not a true assumption, but like that's my reality. And if that, like you said about creating space, right? Like if I as the leader come to create space, but you are like, no, that's not available to me. No, that's not this. Like there's this self-awareness on both sides that is what adds to the power. But again, because the leader is from a power dynamics perspective, still kind of that what people are looking up to, being able to lead by example and being like, hey, you guys, I had a morning. Like my energy is like, and I am going to sit in my office and karaoke to I Believe in a Thing Called Love for the next 3.5 minutes. So please do not disrupt me. And when I come back, I will be in a different mind space. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them at that point.
Yeah.
So like it might sound silly, but one, I've never had a leader say that to me, and that would be kind of amazing. And two, like how much permission does that give you then? Maybe you're not going to be so bold as saying, I need this time to do this thing, because maybe you don't know that yet, but you know that the permission exists because the leader's doing it there in front of everybody. Then reasonably they would allow the rest of the people to be that similar way. So leading by example, folks.
That is so powerful. I would love to see a boss come in and do that, a leader to sing some karaoke in their office. I'd pay to see that.
Quite honestly, I would love to just have a karaoke machine. I feel like if anybody needs this as an outlet, I will even leave my office so you can come in here and do this.
Yeah, don't worry, it's soundproofed.
Right. Yes. And it's not, so everybody can hear it, and that's what makes it good.
Of course. Yeah.
But even now, like so many people are like, go for a walk. You need some fresh air. Go get some fresh air. Right. Like most of the things, especially from a marketing capacity that we are doing, are not on fire. Most of the time, nobody is going to die because this blog post didn't get posted today. Or the social media post didn't go out.
And no one's waiting around for it, by the way.
No, even every once in a while, when I have to cancel a show, there will be somebody that's like, "Was there supposed to be a show today?" And I'll be like, "Oh yeah, but the guest had to cancel because his mom was sick." And blah, blah. Like, I think that's happened like 2 or 3 times in the entire time I've run shows. It's like, no one cares. It doesn't mean they don't like your show or aren't engaged by your stuff and things like that. No, but this is another thing I tell my clients all the time from a frequency perspective. Nobody noticed you didn't post today. Okay, maybe the algorithm noticed, but a human didn't notice. And honestly, I would say on average, it takes like 3 months of no posting for someone to be like, hey, I haven't seen anything from you in a while. Are you fine? Because like, are you still there? And I like, all the time people are so concerned about like, oh no, I missed this week because I was in Singapore and now I have to like come back with a bet. No one noticed you were gone. Just like post a thing. It's fine.
Yeah. I think it's all okay. I mean, I get a little tired of, I think I wrote something about this the other week, but I just get a little tired of, all these LinkedIn guru influencers or whatever telling people, okay, post at 7 a.m. and then make sure you're on 20 minutes prior commenting on other people's stuff, and then 20 minutes after the post engaging with people, and then commenting on X amount of people a day, and then at noon reshare your post, and then good for you. I'm glad you have a system, but this is just not my life. And most people don't need that.
This is the point too, is that like a lot of times what's happening in the marketing tactic area now is that like, I do this and it works for me, so I'm going to teach everyone else how to do it because it works. Yeah. No, it works for you because you are you. Yeah. And I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm not saying it doesn't work for you, but that does not mean that it's going to work for other people. And this is the thing too, where I think it's important to pay attention to what we're feeling, because
Yes.
most of us in our marketing lives are probably going to try something that someone else said works really well. And
Yeah.
so that's fine, right? We're experimenters at heart. So you're going to experiment with something, but pay attention to how that feels for you while you're doing it. Because like even in listening to you explain that, Luke, my brain is like, ugh, I would never do that.
I tried it once because someone told me it was a good, like they told me it worked.
Yeah.
And guess where I work better? Similar to you, getting on a 30-minute call and just talking with somebody.
Right.
I'd rather spend my energy there anyway.
Well, and it's also, there are multiple things that bring you energy, folks. So there's not necessarily just the one thing, right? Like, yes, 30-minute calls is a good one thing, but there's other things, right? Again, like maybe it's a walk in nature, maybe it's moving your body, maybe it's whatever. But like, I'm on like a 50-day streak on my Peloton, and I'm like super excited about it. And just because it like feels so good to like move. And I'm not doing like hard rides or long rides or anything like that, but it's just like movement, and it feels good, and it makes me excited to like get up and move. And that is the point. So like, what are you doing for you? Is it for you, or is it that your job description says you do this, so you do this? But what if there was a way that you could do it that would bring you energy instead of draining your energy?
Yeah.
I would say that's a really great place to do some experiments to see if we can find, if we can do the same things. Like that, what you said, Luke, that's one way to post, right? I have people all the time are like, you must have a content calendar. No, I don't have a content calendar. I tried to have a content calendar, and then every time I tried to use it, it felt inauthentic. So I was just like, no, I can't. That's not for me. It works for lots of people.
Yeah.
I post when I feel called to post. And I've started doing this. I have like a pink pen methodology. So I have a pink pen. And when I'm in like a conversation with someone, if I think it's a good idea for content, I write it in pink in my notes. So that I can flip through and be like, oh, this was a pink thing. But even in a call earlier today, I'm like, oh, this sounds like a social post. Right?
Right.
So then I have a conversation, and then I get off, and then I post it on social, and like in 5 minutes, I'm done. And do I get less impressions than the person who's hacking the algorithm? 100% I get less impressions.
Yeah.
But also, I get good impressions. Right? So the relationships I'm having, the conversations I'm having, the people who are commenting on my stuff, it's not a huge volume of people, but it's meaningful people having meaningful conversations. And again, when you look at the overarching goal of marketing, like, what are you trying to deliver? Because if you're trying to deliver a sale, there's lots of ways to do that. And the algorithm helps in a very small percentage of them, actually, but there's lots of other ways to do it. So if that feels bad, if you were listening to Luke and being like, ugh, that feels bad, don't do that. If you're listening to Luke and that sounded like a genius idea, then you should try it. Try it. See how it feels for you. And just, again, pay attention to the energy, because it's not sustainable for an individual or for someone on your marketing team to keep creating from like a deprivation energy mode. It's not going to happen. You don't want your dead batteries creating content. We're responsible for building relationships or building connections for your business. You want full batteries responsible for doing that. So how are you filling the batteries as a marketing leader? How are you filling the batteries for yourself if you're an entrepreneur? And put that on your checklist today, folks. If you're going to get through your day and be like, check, I observed when I was in my energy and when I was not in my energy, and I had the opportunity to connect meaningfully with another human today. That just came up from an earlier conversation. Put those two things on your checklist. Then if you get to the end of the day and you're just a checklist person and you feel good about checking your list, then we've also checked off some meaningful activities.
It's really good. It's really good. Yeah. I would add one final point, a thought that I'm having here in all this too, is that oftentimes if there's a balance. I find it too. Like I love, I used to write poetry all the time, and like 95% of my poetry is still on my phone and no one's ever seen it, but I've shared some of it. And so there's a balance in it. Like that poetry was really just for me to like
Right.
creatively write. And it was kind of like the dirt and the crap. Musicians talk a lot about this, where you have to write, 1,000 songs to get to the one good one or whatever. And so, I shared some that were decent, but what was the process was powerful and impactful for me. But what was even more powerful was when I did share something and it resonated with somebody.
Mhm.
And so there's this other half of things that, yeah, do things that feel good for yourself, but also when you do things for others, like you get an energy, when you give, you receive something that you could have never gotten by yourself.
Right.
And so there is something powerful here in the creation and the marketing process. Like, don't just think about an ICP, don't just think about an audience, think about an individual that
Mhm.
you could connect with, that you could talk to. Maybe it's from a call like you were just talking, Tracy. I just had this call, I was talking to this person. I'm just going to go share that story because I
Mhm.
knew it was already impactful to them. These are actually the kind of authentic and vulnerable things that we can do in the creation process that actually end up building more and better, deep relationships with
Mhm.
people because someone read it or saw it or listened to it and said, wait a second, I think they're talking about me. And so there is something as well in the creation process, like, this doesn't always have to be true, but like, hey, wait, who is this for? Is this something I'm
Mhm.
just doing for me? Okay, great. Then I'm just gonna do it for me. That's fine. But is this something that's maybe for someone else?
Mhm.
And so it's just, I don't know, another little thing to think about, because I think we end up, stuff that I have created before that I thought that was just a throwaway. Someone actually like read or saw it and we're like, man, that really, I needed that. I needed to hear
Mhm.
that, or I saw that and it was actually really valuable for my work and the way. And I'm, like, oh, okay, I didn't know,
Yeah.
and so I don't know, just another little thought as far as energy goes.
Yeah. Well, and like to like sandwich that thought, one of the things I always recommend to people is when something does resonate with you, tell somebody it,
Oh
right?
my
And if you're not
goodness,
in
yes.
this scenario where you want to like post it in a comment or whatever because it's too public, that's fine. This is what direct messages are for,
Yep.
right? I got one earlier today because a like friend of mine, I did a podcast with her and she released it today, and then someone, my network, watched it and was like, oh my gosh, I love your conversation with Kim and how you talked about this. And I was like,
Yeah.
if you don't share those things, we don't know that. Right? Because we
Yeah.
can look
Right.
at a post and be like, oh, this got 38 impressions, which you would be like, oh man, that's terrible, right? Like, what are you doing, LinkedIn? But
Hmm.
like, what if that was super meaningful to 10
Right.
people? If that makes a huge difference. And when people, especially when there is that kind of authenticity and vulnerability that
Hmm.
people have in the stuff that they're creating, whether that is a kind of out there opinion blog post that you're writing on behalf of a brand, or somebody is interviewed live on a show, or something that might make you feel vulnerable, when
Hmm.
that impacts you in a positive way, take 2 minutes and tell people that, because
Yeah.
that's where a relationship begins. That's where that exchange begins to allow for the energy to flow between people.
Hmm.
So I was flowing this out and you received it, and then in
Yeah.
doing so, telling me, then it's flowing back to me, and now the energy
Right.
is flowing, and that is a feeling that everybody loves. So I always think
Love
it's
it.
funny. Every time I go to a networking event where they make you like ask people for stuff, which I still am not sure why
Hmm.
people do that, but like I always ask people to like send a message to somebody who like you're thinking about, or who did something meaningful
Hmm.
or like stood out for you. Um, because why not? Right? That's just spreading the love. So
Yeah.
tell people, just tell people things.
I love it. I love it. It's powerful. It's
Awesome.
powerful stuff right here.
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing about, like, again, in marketing, we can get so caught up on color tones and like, what color is this button? And how
Hmm.
does this tagline, and how do we fit this many keywords into a tagline? And our brains can get really caught up in a lot of the tactical stuff.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, most of that brand meaning, the brand
Hmm.
experience that is going to be experienced in the world, is based on an energy flow. And it
Yeah.
starts with your marketing team. It flows out from them. So if they are fueling from nothing, what is flowing out? And if we don't have that kind of conversational methodology in our marketing at some point, this is a nice thing about social media. Social media can be very easily used from a conversational perspective.
Yeah.
How is that flowing back in? Because that is the activity, that flowing of conversation, that flowing of energy that builds the brand experience, that makes people want to continue to be part of your brand or not want to be part of your brand.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would rather have people want to be part of my brand.
Amen. Amen. So good.
Oh, awesome, Luke. Okay, well, we are out of time. We are overtime for today because this conversation was so good. But Luke, where can people find you if they're interested in learning more about what you can do from having a conversation about the energy of creation all the way up to providing some services?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I mean, right here on LinkedIn. Under my name, Luke Frazier. You'll probably see a cactus or a mustache or something like that. And just send over a message, send over a DM. We are all always in the space of helping people simplify and better tell their stories in the realm of brand and B2B content marketing. And so that's primarily where you can find us, where we're having fun. And it would be even more meaningful if actually I was just thinking about this. Johnny Levy was the guy who connected you and I. And if you're not connected with him, he's a guy you need to go connect with.
It's true. He will give you energy. That is for sure.
You will leave with more energy than you wanted.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe you didn't know you wanted that much energy, but now you have it. And this is part of this too. So I see, hopefully, there were just many people really deeply pondering the energy of creation today, which is why we don't have anybody in the chat. But here's another reason why I encourage you guys to put stuff in the chat, because right now I can say like, hey, you can connect with me, you can connect with Luke if you want to continue the conversation of the energy of creation. But it's a lot more powerful when you guys see each other in the comments and get into the conversation, because this isn't about like me and Luke coming here and selling our services. This is about us creating a conversation around the energy of creation. And each of you watching has your own energy of creation. And maybe you've tapped into it yet, and maybe you haven't. Maybe I'm a good person to ask the questions. Maybe I'm not. And maybe someone else who is listening to this show is a better match for that. And so I'm holding you all accountable for next time. Get in the comments or put something in the comments now. It's fine. If you're watching on the replay, put something in the comments now, because then you guys get to see each other and build a community of people who are talking about the energy of creation, so that you can stay in the conversation of the energy of creation, which is what allows you to actually create that intention that Luke talked about and to practice those skills that allow us to be in that energy as much as possible. So shame on you all for not being in the chat today. Because I know you're there. I saw the little eyeball thing. I saw people. Anyway, Luke, thank you so much for sharing such wonderful examples and your expertise with us today. If any of you are reaching out to Luke, let him know that you saw him on the show, so he has a little bit of context. If we're not already connected, please reach out to me. I love any conversation about energy. And until next time, folks, permission to do you.